Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Teacher Talk, the podcast. Today, I'm here with Mr. TenEyck. Mr. TenEyck, say hi.
Hello.
And Mr. TenEyck is an algebra teacher for freshmen and...
Sophomores, some juniors, primarily freshmen. Anyone that needs Algebra 2.
So, a lot of us. And then he also coaches shot put and discus for the track and field team, and also disc golf.
Disc golf, yeah.
Disc golf appearance sometimes, most times.
Most times.
Okay.
Assisting Mr. Colson.
Yeah, the best. Okay, so I'm here to ask some questions. Thanks for being willing to
My pleasure.
answer my questions. And we're gonna start off with some silly questions. I know you already saw them, but I hope you think they're silly too. The first one. Oh, also, Mr. TenEyck is really into strength and fitness and runs the Strong and Fit Winterum.
This is true.
And has children pull cars, which
yeah.
that's bad.
No, it's good. It's very good.
Sure. Okay, so first question, if you could only lift one object for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Yeah, maybe I should have asked you before we started this what you meant by that. Because I guess your answer is probably more silly than your question is meant to be more silly.
Dumbbell.
Barbell.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's more versatile than a kettlebell or a dumbbell. You can go heavier. You can do an extremely wide range of movements. But it sounded like you were asking like for an
silly,
object.
Yeah, like silly object.
So probably rocks. I would say.
What type of rock?
So like the rocks are readily available. They're heavy. They come in different forms. So that means.
Oh, so like you could have a lot of them.
Yeah, and they would be both challenging due to their size and their weight, but also their shape. Right. Okay. So just because I have one rock, it might be a different shape than another one, which make it harder to move, even if it was the same weight.
Okay, that's true.
So if I had really nothing else, just large rocks would be fun.
That's a good answer.
Thanks.
And then next silly question. Which Bible character do you think would be the best at shot put and discus?
Yeah, this might sound controversial because I think the answer sounds like it's going to be a David or a someone, but I'm probably going to have to go with Goliath.
Because he's a giant?
Right, so he's huge, and then...
But he got killed.
But if you assume, like, what would be true about a soldier at his time, you have to assume he's not huge and, like, bulky and slow. I would assume he's very athletic because of what he carries, the description of his armor and his weapons, that he can use a spear, that he can move around a battlefield. So I'm assuming he's fairly agile for his frame, and that would give him the potential of being a really good thrower.
So who's winning, Griffin or Goliath?
Sadly, sorry, Griff. We're going to have to go with Goliath.
Okay, I guess that makes sense. That's true. And last silly question, what's your go-to hype song when you're lifting?
So in the gym, it's Fuel by Metallica.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So, like, heavy metal. Do you play that for the throwers?
I do not. I let them play music if they're fairly well behaved.
Do you like the music they play?
Yeah, I like all good music.
Okay, thank you. Next questions, getting to more serious questions. Oh,
no,
did you make it?
No,
okay.
No.
Okay. First one, physical strength training, like we stated, is obviously a pretty important part in your life, but how do you think that spiritual strength is built in comparison?
Yeah, how it's built. I think it's not entirely different. It looks different, right? It feels different perhaps, but the idea of strength isn't I pick the thing up once, or I move the thing once, or I even shoot a free throw once. It's I've done it 10,000 times, with an increasing level of resistance, with some variety in how I perform that movement, and my muscles get torn down a little bit, but not destroyed, so that my body rebuilds them so they're stronger, so that if they ever encounter that stress again, they're better equipped to face it. And really, I think spiritual strength is built in a similar way. So the Lord, right, in his sovereignty and his providence, he gives me things, he gives us things that maybe aren't super pleasant. Like the gym isn't always super pleasant.
No.
Because, it might hurt, it might be sore, I might not be in the mood for it today. But the Lord in his grace says, I'm not considering those things. I'm considering your need to be stronger. So he gives me a stress. He gives me something that maybe tears me a little bit, but it doesn't destroy me.
Yeah.
And if I respond the way I ought to, meaning I'm leaning on him, I'm seeking him, I'm trying to walk by the Spirit, I'm trying to live in fellowship well with my local church. I have people in my life who keep me accountable. I've spent time in the Word. I've spent time in prayer. All those things help me get through that and then grow and rebuild, just as getting enough sleep, drinking enough water, having a good diet. Like all those things are going to let my body respond well to the time in the gym.
Yeah.
If I just went to the gym and lifted for 12 hours a day, skipped sleeping, ate garbage, I would actually not get stronger. I would actually get weaker, right? My body would eventually give out on me. Just like if I experienced the stress of life without the recuperative things like the grace of God that I experienced through my friends, through prayer, through scripture, through my church. I think in all that, like I get built up and I'm grown spiritually.
Yeah, that's really good. Thank you. And similarly, like a lot of this world today is so focused on like fitness and well-being and putting enough protein in your meal and whatever this, whatever that. But what do you think like spiritual wellness and the meaning of that means in a world today where we're so focused on physical wellness and strength?
Yeah, I was thinking about this a lot on my drive to work today. So my answer might be long.
That's okay.
And it might be strange sounding, but my thought was like wellness and wholeness and health is in a sense natural, right? But what I mean by natural is not that it just happens, but when I see it, I know it's right. Right? If my yard is green, I just think like, okay, great. That's how my yard's supposed to be. It's not until brown spots start appearing that I think, oh, something's off. If I see a bird flying in my backyard, I'm not amazed like, oh my gosh, animals can fight against gravity. I'm just like, okay, that's normal. But, and sadly we've all seen this, if I see a bird with a broken wing, there's something that tells me there's a problem. There's a lack of health here. There's a lack of well-being. But then if I see someone, and you've seen these videos online, if someone takes in an animal who's gotten stuck somewhere, or a bird that's broken his wing, and they take it in and they mend it and they try to rehabilitate the animal, most of us are moved by that. Most people find that moving. This application of health, or this rebuilding of what's right, that is meaningful to the vast majority of people, maybe all people. Can you ask your question again? I kind of lost my my train of thought.
Like the spiritual wellness versus
right.
Like in a world that emphasizes.
So like I am meant to be. I'm in the sense that I'm created to be healthy, both physically and spiritually, right? And it's out of order when I'm not. Yeah. Right. Life falls apart. So when I start experiencing things like depression, I don't think that's solely a neurological thing. Certainly that can play in many people's lives a role in it. But if I am chronically depressed, or I have some kind of a fear or an anxiety or some lack of internal unwellness or illness, I think there must be a spiritual component to that, because I'm not just a body and I'm not just a spirit. These things comprise me. They're both components of who I am. I can't be one without the other. And if my spirit is, if I'm not a believer, if my spirit is dead, if my soul is dead, then my living body is carrying around spiritual death, and that is going to play into my life, even if I'm a naturally upbeat and kind of positive mindset person. If I'm a believer and I'm not doing the things I said a second ago, if I'm not seeking the Lord on a regular basis, if I'm not having grace applied to my life consistently for all the times I've fallen, if I'm not seeking the encouragement and the fellowship and the strengthening and the positive stressing from my local church and from friends, from reading the scriptures, I'm just not going to have that sense of wellness and that health. And I'm going to be more akin to the bird with a broken wing. And I think it's not the only source or cause, but I do think a lot of our woes today and a lot of our mental health crisis is in part due to the fact that I am meant to live in relationship with my creator.
Yeah.
And I'm meant to live in a creator-fueled relationship with others. Mm-hmm. And if I don't do that, it doesn't matter how well my other aspects are going, that there's going to be a brokenness in that. It's not going to go well.
Yeah.
Right? When I see the bird, it doesn't strike me that his feet are in really good condition if his wing's broken.
Yeah.
I don't think, well, you're like 90% okay. I'll let you go. You're fine. I think like, no, there's a problem that's going to affect your whole being, even if the rest of your being right now is healthy.
Yeah. Thank you. That was great. Switching gears a little bit. Obviously, you're a teacher.
I am.
So what what called you into that path? Like, did you choose that? Were you planning on that?
Yeah, so I was definitely not planning on that. If you had talked to high school Mr. TenEyck, unfortunately, like many high schoolers, I wasn't looking down the line far enough. I didn't have a plan. I wasn't trying to not have a plan. I just didn't really think about like, what am I going to do someday? I just assumed like, well, I'll do today and I'll do tomorrow, and I don't know. We'll see what happens after that.
Yeah.
So the path to me becoming a teacher certainly has a lot of different components to it in hindsight, but the big one, probably what answers your question directly, is my wife and I are from Michigan. We moved to North Carolina about 13 years ago because she, as a child, wanted to be a teacher.
Oh,
like she knew her path from like middle school. She wanted to be in education, and so we moved down, and she got a job teaching here in North Carolina. Just in a kind of end of the year meeting, her district had said, we're just really in need for teachers because a lot of schools always are. This is a public school at the time, and they were specifically in need of math teachers. And she just kind of threw out in this meeting. She was like, "Hey, I've never asked him, but I think my husband would do really well in the classroom." So she came home and she said, "Hey, they want to meet with you. Are you willing to just go? It's not an interview. Like, you just want to go chat with them?" And I said, "Sure." Yeah. So I'm in like shorts and athletic I'm just like gym clothes, because they said like, we're just gonna chat.
Yeah.
And then in the chatting they said, "Can we make this an official interview?"
Oh.
And then they just from there hired me.
From the meeting?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So that's certainly not the like most glorious or like whatever story, but I do look back and I do see that I'm glad that it happened. I'm kind of glad that it happened that way. I think teaching for me has been very formative. It has helped me grow into the person I both am and am becoming. The Lord's used it in a lot of ways to refine me and to strengthen and sharpen me. I'm not saying this to be silly or goofy or falsely humble. I don't think I'm that great of a teacher. I think my colleagues and my wife and people I've been around are excellent teachers. And I feel like I'm just trailing on the coattails of many who do great. But I do think it is the place I'm meant to be, because I do feel a deep and resounding affection for students. I remember being young and often feeling like just adults didn't understand us.
Yeah.
I would have the phrase like, "Well, you'll understand when you're older," and that just grated my emotions. I was just like, no, like, I'm smarter than you. I understand now.
Yeah.
In my prideful teenage thoughts. But I remember thinking a lot as a teenager, like, okay, when I'm older, I need to be mindful of how I feel right now.
Yeah.
Like someone probably well-intentioned talking down to me or saying, like, well, you're young, therefore stupid, therefore you don't get this, but someday you'll get it. I remember feeling that impact and thinking like, okay, I need to hold that in my mind. Prior to teaching, I was involved with the youth ministry for a long time.
Like as a youth pastor?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think just all those things kind of coalesce into, again, not that I'm the best at it, but I do think I fit well in a classroom because I do relate well to students. I usually joke it's because of my maturity level. That's not untrue.
I think it's true.
But I feel like I can roll with like the teenage silliness and lack of maturity.
Yeah.
And again, I still do kind of remember what it was like to be younger. So it's a path that I never foresaw. If you would ask me again, I wouldn't have gotten mad about it, but I would have said no. I don't think that's for me.
Yeah.
But I'm extremely grateful that this is where the Lord has brought me.
Yay. I wish I could be like, yes, you're such a good teacher, but I just never have had a class.
Right, yeah.
But I'm sure. And not only are you a teacher, but you're a coach too.
This is true.
So, question is, has coaching ever given you a deeper understanding of how God trains or disciplines us in love?
That's a good question. Yeah. I mean, I would love to say like, yeah, I have this like insight from heaven on a daily basis, and the Hallelujah chorus rings, and I have this moment, and I don't, right? Because I'm just a sinful knucklehead. But if I do stop and think about it, I do think like, okay, I am prescribing things that sometimes the students love and sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
I'm prescribing things that at some point are difficult, and at some point I'm trying to have the wisdom to say, here's something that you can't do. Right.
Yeah.
Or it's at the edge of what you can do, right? Because I can't be a good athlete if I stay where I am. Mm-hmm. And I can think back to my time. So I was in sports in high school.
Did you do shot put and discus?
I did. Yeah. So
Okay.
just throughout sports in high school, I had what I thought were really excellent coaches, and they were, in my opinion, excellent. One, because I knew they cared for me, they loved me, but they were also tough on me.
Yeah.
So again, just various coaches just getting on me and being very gruff and very rough, but not because they disliked me and not because they were just jerks, because they said, I know you can do better and I want to see you do better.
Yeah.
And so in whatever wisdom I may have, I'm trying to do that for students. And then if I do reflect on that, I think, okay, I have, a centimeter of wisdom. The Lord has an infinity of wisdom. He knows how to give me things that I'm not going to love, that I'm not able to do, that I can't hold up under. But part of it is he wants me to grow through these things. But part of it, he also wants me to understand that he's the one who's holding it up. He's the one who's carrying me. He's the one who's walking me through these things. And certainly as a student, I got frustrated with coaches. I know some people that I've worked with can get frustrated with me or just get frustrated at the process, right? Mm-hmm. So you get to a meet or you get to a game and you don't do as you wanted to do, or you don't do as you potentially could. Mm-hmm. And that can be, disheartening, that can be frustrating. And in life, we don't always do what we think we could or accomplish what we want, or events don't go our way. Right? And there's a time where a good coach comes alongside you and says, if you had shown up to practice and if you would eat right and if you go to bed, like, this would be better. We got to learn from it. And another time the coach comes alongside and says, you know what, you did really well, and we just didn't do it today. And just kind of embraces you. And I do think it's something I should reflect on more. But even in thinking about it in preparation for this, it is an interesting parallel that I do see a lot of that. Yeah,
that's great. And I know you've talked about your younger high school self a little bit already, but if there was one piece of advice you would go back and give to your younger self, what would it be?
Yeah, that's always like an intriguing question to me, right? Because my younger self, sadly, like many younger selves, maybe he wasn't the best listener. Mm-hmm. So I can say a lot to him, and maybe he would hear that, maybe he wouldn't.
Right.
I think one of the biggest things I would say to him would be, to use your time well, in all ways. I wasn't a great student in some respects. I was that person that, no one's really fond of, where you can just goof off the whole class period and then get an A on the test. And that bit me hard in college because I couldn't do that anymore.
Yeah.
But I had not learned to be a student. I didn't have a tremendously good diet, but I had an 18-year-old body, so I could handle that. Yeah. I thought I was really athletic and really strong, and I was okay, but I didn't really know what I was doing either.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing is, I was a believer in high school. I got saved as a freshman, and again, I think I grew well, and I think I did a lot well, but I would go back to myself and say, there's this time that you have with people that you won't see anymore and you won't associate with anymore, and use this time as best as you can to encourage them in Christ. A phrase that I was told once that I remember, I'm not sure its original source, but it's, there's only one life will soon be past, only what's done for Christ will last. And I had a great high school time and a great college time, and I have fond memories and friends that I still keep in touch with. But I do look back and think, there's things I could have done just more for the sake of Christ. And then if there was two things I might say, just to, just spend time with people who you think will be around longer than they will be.
Yeah. And similarly, a little bit, what advice would you give to a student struggling to find God's presence in the middle of anxiety or uncertainty? And in parentheses, I put low-key me right now, because,
You did, like, if you could communicate with a fish, could you tell him he's in the ocean?
Yeah.
Like, would he be like, what are you even talking about? We're so immersed in God's presence that it's often like he's not even there. And so what I would say is, I would say a few things. One, I would say just lean into the scriptures. Part of that comes through hearing it at church. Part of that comes through, if you're reading solid Christian books that reference scripture. Part of it might be in a Bible study you attend, whether at school or at church or whatnot. But I think just individually, making sure that you're putting time to read through the scripture cover to cover. It doesn't have to be once a year. For a lot of people that's overwhelming, but spending enough time in there that you are not only just learning facts like we learn in school, but you're learning, how does God communicate with people? Because what you find is, or at least what I found is, from book to book, the Lord doesn't work the same way with every person every time. In one time he's talking directly, but in another time the way he's interacting with someone is wildly different. And if I see kind of that wide swath of the way the Lord works with his people, I'll be more readily available to think like, well, maybe this is God working. I think a second thing would be talking to an older generation. And that might conjure images of someone in a walker with gray hair. It could be that person, but just someone who's walked with the Lord longer than you. They may be your same age, but if they've walked with the Lord longer, ask them that question. So like, how has the Lord been with you? And this goes back kind of the first question. For most people that I've asked that of, it's always the hard times, right? So I can't count the number of times someone said to me, I would never want to go back and do this again. But I would never erase it from my life. And sometimes that's been a horrific thing, an illness or an injury or loss of a loved one. Just the number of saints that have said that me going through this and the Lord walking with me now is so real and so tangible, and has crafted me in a way that I couldn't have done otherwise. I hated it, but here I am, and I'm stronger because of it, and closer with Christ because of it. And I think the third thing is, I've said a couple of times, is just be in community with other believers. And so when I say like part of a local church, if I just go somewhere on Sunday morning, that's not it. That's great. You need to be doing that. But I can go to a local church, big or small, right? I can go to Summit. I can go to the church of 100 people. And if no one in the room knows me, then I'm not doing this the way I ought to be doing. But if I'm routinely spending a decent chunk of my life with other people, and these people know how I think and how I feel, and they just know more than my bio on social media, right? They know who I am as a person. And they're the kind of people that would speak into my life to give encouragement and to give redirection, much like a coach. Someone who's not willing to say like, hey man, like, you're an idiot, you shouldn't have done that. Or to comfort you in a time that seems really hard. I think there are still times in all those things where the Lord puts us in a quiet time where we're not hearing from him. And he does that for a very good purpose that's hard to feel. But I would say if you're walking with the Lord faithfully and you feel like he's not there, I would say just keep walking. And those things can help. Just call out to him, to pray to him, to ask him to make himself known, right? The Lord loves to do what he's promised to do.
Yeah.
Right? If he says, I'm never going to forsake you, I'm never going to leave you, I'm always going to be here, you know that's true, and you can lean into that. And so the Lord wants you to trust that and wants you to feel that, and he's faithful to answer that if you ask that.
Yeah. Thank you so much. That was
Welcome.
great. Last little thing, to close, can you name one way you've seen God's strength show up in your weakness recently? Doesn't have to be long or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like a beautiful verse, but one we never want. Like, it sounds great. Like, you'll be made strong in your weakness. It's like, oh, that's lovely.
Yeah.
But we never want that.
Yeah.
So like you try to away from it, or you turn your back to it, or you try to not have that happen. Yeah, I would say, and I'm not going to name names, but just various people that I've just been really abrupt with, and not like a good, healthy, like redirecting, but just gruff and rough and impatient and mean-spirited. I've done that, and that doesn't help, isn't positive. But I've seen the Lord still, like, in that relationship in various ways, like, make it stronger and build it up, provide opportunities either for me to go and say, hey, like, I shouldn't have talked that way, or I shouldn't have said that, or even just internally for me to say, like, you know what, like, why am I like this? Why am I quick-tempered like that? So maybe that's not super concrete feeling or sounding, but
Yeah.
yeah, and yeah.
Yay. Thank you so much for being willing to share. That was great. A lot of stuff that I feel like I need to hear as a person who's kind of losing their mind and ready to leave these halls. I'm just trying to find ways to enjoy the last bit. But do you have any silly quote that you want to end with?
Silly quote.
Like quote of the day, quote of the episode.
Wow. Yeah.
Something.
You're silly. I wasn't prepared for that one.
You don't have to prepare for it. A lot of pressure's on.
This is cheesy because this is like the little tagline on my email that we're supposed to put on our emails, like a quote. And so mine is by the author who wrote Winnie the Pooh, but the quote's from Winnie the Pooh.
Okay.
But he says, to the uneducated, an A is just 3 sticks.
That's a good one.
Doesn't matter that much, does it?
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Thank you guys for listening. I'll be back with another episode soon.